It is 6 o'clock, right on the dot. Today is Monday, the very first day of July, July 1st, 2024. We are more than halfway through this year already, and we have a whole nother half to go. So I hope folks are excited for the summer. I hope folks are excited for the rest of this year. Despite everything else that is going on, I hope folks still have things that excite them moving forward. But if you are not familiar, my name is Aiden Rodriguez-Swanson. I am the senior statewide organizer with California WFP, based here in the Bay Area. It is, despite being the Bay Area, very warm today and will continue to be extremely hot for the remainder of this week. I hope everyone who is enduring the heat is able to remain cool, stay hydrated, of course. I know up in Sacramento it'll be past 110 for multiple days in a row. So not envious of that. And we down here, I think, are going to be, if not past 100, definitely close to 100, maybe up for a couple of days. But other than that, I hope folks are excited for the remainder of summer. It is the first 6:01. I think I will get started then for folks. Thank you for showing up on time. If you are new here, we do our welcome gatherings and some of our events on YouTube as opposed to Zoom. It just allows us to do a bit more of the theatrics, a bit more of like the presentation side of things, not just the typical Zoom format that folks might be used to. However, you are still able to talk to me directly. You can talk to one another, of course, in the chat. I believe you have to be subscribed. I don't remember if I changed it or not. Subscribe to the channel. That just means you can subscribe to the channel. It's our way to keeping out the trolls and the folks who are in this space to just cause chaos and mayhem. But you can say hi, say where you're joining from. Always love to hear where folks are from, especially those of you who are new here to this space. But without further ado, I would like to get us started with a couple of the community agreements that I always start off with in these spaces. That is these three: take space and make space. This basically means if you are someone who is often talking in spaces like this, maybe take a step back. Just give other folks the chance to chime in, share their thoughts, share their ideas. And conversely, if you are someone who is often shy or like new to these kind of spaces, this is a space for you to actually take that space. I encourage it. I welcome it. Everyone starts their journey with some little thing here or there. Even just a simple hello just lets other folks know that you're here, listening, paying attention. You don't have to chime in other than that if you want to, but again, this is a space for you to just get to know one another, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, whatever it may be. What happens here stays here. What is learned here leaves here. Any interactions we have, especially with those of us who are new and learning about this space, kind of feeling out the norms, let that stuff just stay here. But what you learn from maybe one another, if other folks chime in, or just from my presentation and what I go through, take that piece with you. Take the pieces that like, okay, this really resonated with me, or this is information I did not know before. Anything like that, feel free to bring that with you out into the world. And lastly, and I think one of the most important pieces, is speak from your own experience using I statements. So if I say something like, chocolate is terrible, that doesn't leave room for just how I view things and how someone else might view things. But let's say then conversely, if I say, oh, I think chocolate is terrible, it shows what my stance is on it. Obviously, this is a kind of a silly example, but it really shows like how you approach the conversation. You either make a blanket statement or you say, I believe or I think, and that allows other people to be like, okay, this is what this individual thinks. This is how they are approaching this conversation, and it allows a dialogue to happen. So whether I'm right or wrong about chocolate, I'm just coming into the space for folks to understand, like, oh, this is what I think, and that's not what I believe. I think chocolate is completely fine, but that's just the example I like to give. So enough about that. And if folks have anything else that they would like to chime in on, feel free to bring it up in the chat. I think that's completely fine. Anything that's talked about here, if you have questions, if I'm talking too fast about something, if I say some lingo and terminology that doesn't make sense, feel free to ask me. However, this is the basic overview of how we are focusing on WFP. And this will start off with kind of like the large, broad overview of what WFP is, and then kind of narrow it down from there. So starting off, our theory of change, the party that we need. So our theory of change is basically this North Star that is listed out here, and I'll read it out for folks. It's to build a multiracial, feminist, working people's political party of the American left that wins governing power to enact a structural reform agenda to save the planet and all the people on it. So there's a bunch of pieces here that I really want to highlight for folks. First being that it just shows who we want to build with, and being explicit about it. There's often times in the left or just in kind of like the political spaces where they say, oh, I want to build a party of working people or all of this stuff. That's cool. That's great. Thanks for joining, Edward and Dominic. Cool to see you. But explicitly here, multiracial, feminist, working people's political party. Again, being explicit about these pieces and who we want to be building with. The next piece, too, is not only are we of the American left, and not only are we looking to gain power, and power kind of in leftist spaces is tricky to kind of talk about sometimes, where like, oh, power corrupts, what have you, but one of our goals is that we want to win governing power. So it's not enough to just always be the underdog. We would like to actually utilize the power and govern with it. And what we would like to do, and the goal with that governing power, with the base of the political people that I've mentioned before, is to save the planet and all the people on it. Now, that doesn't go into specifics of, oh, what policy gets us from A to B, or that doesn't say, oh, what does governing power look like at every single level? But this is our North Star. So anytime we have conversations around what our priorities are, what our goals are, keep that piece in mind, as this is how this really informs a lot of the things that we do. And we try to keep this as our North Star because it's stuck there, as a North Star is, to really guide us along the way. So where did this kind of come from? So this didn't just come out of nowhere. This came with a lot of thought, a lot of folks, a lot of conversations. And what this really stemmed from was what we saw as the main struggles here in the US. I know this is the California WFP, and this isn't necessarily, we're not national, but some of the main struggles that we see nationally definitely play a part here in California. And our issues are a little bit different, but I'll talk about that later. But the main struggles that we see are these four here. So the authoritarian white nationalist takeover of the GOP being the Republicans, the Democratic Party controlled by wealthy and corporate forces, Democrats losing working class people of all races, and the two-party system limiting our room to maneuver. So each of these, all of these are naturally interconnected, but these are the main issues that we see as struggles that we're facing as WFP, as folks trying to build this political party in this current political space that we're in. So starting off, we have authoritarian white nationalist takeover of the GOP. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but this is pretty clear and apparent for a lot of folks. This is still the party of Donald Trump, but also expanding beyond just his sphere of influence. We are seeing just the authoritarian and white nationalist takeover of parties, not just within the United States, but elsewhere, like France and then Germany. So this is an issue that's across the globe, things that we're running into. But as it shows up here in the US, this looks like sometimes the incitements of racial violence, citing quote-unquote attacks on wokeness, restricting what decisions can be made about our bodies, rising theocracy, open attacks on democracy, violence against bars, libraries, what have you, that are hosting drag shows. passing laws to erase entire groups of people. All of these show up with or without Donald Trump at this point. So this has become a takeover of the GOP, which is why we're saying it's not just a threat of Donald Trump. This is a larger threat of the party becoming like that. So the next is on the other side of the aisle, you have the corporate and wealthy control of the Democratic Party. When it comes to social issues, for the most part, the Democratic Party does a decent job at defending basic rights of folks here in the States. Their foreign policy is definitely a lot different than that. But it also normalizes the status quo, and especially maintaining an electoral system and an economic tax system that benefits the corporate and wealthy forces that control the party. This is a problem for a multitude of reasons, but this is showing, okay, this is what the Democratic Party's priorities are in terms of their usage of power. It's to protect and continue to fund basically the corporate and wealthy control of their own party through these individuals. On the other side, the GOP is okay, we have the goals in mind of how we want to implement Christian theocracy, right-wing authoritarianism. Those are the two options that kind of we're stuck with there. And what that leads to, ultimately, is a two-party system that limits our room to maneuver. And what does this actually mean? So these are just three. This is not end-all be-all, an exhaustive list of everything that is a problem with the two-party system. But it then forces folks to have to pick between one or the other because there is a spoiler problem where third-party candidates can be seen to take votes away from one of these two individuals. So if you are running to the left of Democrats for a race, regardless of presidential or not down ballot, you risk the potential of taking votes from the Democratic candidate, enabling a conservative Republican corporate candidate to win that seat. Now, that's a problem with the two-party system. That this is not an analysis of all political parties and how they operate. That's just a problem within this system. It also, for the voters' perspective, forces them to be strategic in their voting. It's okay, do I choose this person or this person? I hate them both, but who do I vote for? That, again, is a problem with the two-party system. One party is not really good. The other party is not really good on this issue. And then you're stuck between, okay, this is what I have to focus on. And then for campaigns themselves, they are stuck focusing on the swing voters, the folks that sway between, oh, this year I'm going to vote for Obama. I'm going to vote for Obama again. Now I'm going to vote for Trump. So a two-time Obama voter switching over to a Trump voter, and then maybe they switch back to a Biden voter and then switch back to Trump, and then what have you. The campaigns then prioritize those swing voters who will vote, but flip-flop depending on which way the wind blows. For whatever reason they might be a swing voter, the campaigns still prioritize them. Now, I mentioned and talked about some of these main three ones. And now I really want to kind of focus on how do we see Democrats losing working class people of all races. And I found this about 3 months ago, just kind of by chance looking through and reading articles. And I think this, in a graph, as well as graphs can, perfectly encapsulate this issue of Democrats losing working class people of all races and wealthy and corporate forces going to the Democratic Party. So you see here, from the 60s all the way to where we are now, the poorest third of Americans are represented by this blue line. Above the middle line in the center of the screen is Democrat alignment. Below is Republican alignment. The richest third, represented by the red line, are down at the bottom. And we are getting close to a convergence point, especially on this trajectory, of the two completely flipping, of where the Democrats have relied solely on the poorest third and then some folks in the middle. They've started to drastically lose them, and they've lost them and then gained the rich and well-connected in that in their stead. So, but remember, we're trying to build a political party of working class Americans and Californians in this example here. So we have a lot of things ahead of us in terms of what the issues are, and how we want to approach them. So when people think of political parties, especially when they think of a third party, they often think of this. They think of, you got Republicans, you got Democrats, and then you have a spoiler candidate that is running for office, what have you. However, we like to define a political party slightly different from what folks might often think of, or what they might see in a typical definition out and about in political spheres. So this is how we define a political party, with these 4 pieces. First, it is people organizing together. 2, it is to do elections. 3, around a platform. And 4, governed by a clear ideology. So this is basically, again, the same piece as our North Star. Our North Star is both our North Star and our definition of a party, because it's like we're organizing to do elections around the specific platform and then governed by the ideology. So each of these is necessary to build out the party that we would like. I will not do and read it out loud what Maurice Mitchell, who is our National Executive Director of WFP, says here, but this is basically, again, him saying in different words what our North Star is. If you have not already, our recording of our convention, which is already a month ago, surprisingly, here in California, was held in San Francisco. We have recordings online on our YouTube page. So if you are interested in checking this out, Maurice spoke at the Saturday morning opening. So I think it's the second convention video on our YouTube. Check it out. He speaks for a couple minutes. I think he puts into words just the power that we have as WFP as we are building it out with everybody, and 2, just kind of like laying out in common terms, in like everyday language, the importance of the work that we do in this space. So I encourage folks to check it out. A couple minutes. It's on our YouTube page, especially checking it out after this. So where do we fit within California? California does have some of these, and shows up in these main issues as well, the 4 struggles that I mentioned before, and diving a bit deeper into what the actual issues are here in California. One, there's kind of a misconception almost of like what folks think of California versus the reality of the situation. When folks think of how California votes, they often think, oh, California's blue and it's going to stay that way. Yeah, I mean, for a presidential ticket in a presidential race, that's going to be the case. There's little to change that, barring some drastic shift that no one can kind of like anticipate at this point. That's typically how folks think of California voting. However, there's a lot of red undertones, and red being conservative and Republican. Not just Republican, but I mean more conservative, because Republicans don't have the voter registration in California that it would seem like they do. I'm just going to say conservative when I talk about the red undertones pieces. So in terms of what this looks like down ballot, for the general election, California votes pretty blue. You can see here on the left 2020 general election, majority blue, and the red areas, the population is a lot smaller than those other, especially some of the coastal areas. However, in that same election, you had Prop 15 that would have addressed stuff around Prop 13, and then financing stuff for schools and communities. That same election, that same vote that folks had voting for Biden, is a very different vote down ballot on things that pertain to the issues that we face here in California specifically. The conservative forces still maintain a strong foothold in Central Valley, Inland Empire, Orange County, San Diego, that they normally wouldn't have in a presidential race. So despite California going blue, same election, you will have a lot of conservative votes push back against anything kind of specific more to California. So how do we address this? I mean, I'm not going to go into like a full explanation of how we can tackle all of these issues in the span of this hour, but I'll just kind of give a broad overview. So, firstly, talking about what WFP is in California. So we are comprised of three pillars in our governing body. We have statewide labor unions, we have statewide communities C4s, and we have regional charters. California is massive. So not only did we have that, but we also needed 7 regional charters in order to accurately manage all the different races that we have going on and policy work on regional levels. So the 7 regional charters are the Bay Area, Central Coast, Central Valley, LA County, Orange County, Inland Empire, and San Diego. And then each of these is comprised of 3 pillars: labor unions, community C4s, and individual members, which are represented by member reps. And I'll get to that in a bit. The reason I mention all of this stuff, and it's a very kind of like not super technical overview of what California WFP is that California WFP, if you notice here, staff isn't included in this governing body piece. I myself am staff. There is a bunch of other staff that I'll share with later. But we don't sit on this governing body piece. This is made up of, again, labor unions, C4s, regional charter reps from the regional charters, and then individual dues-paying members. At that same time, are represented by member reps who they elect to sit on the regional charters. So WFP is more than just, and this is something I tell folks all the time, WFP is and always has been, from its conception here in California, been more than just the staff. There are a lot of folks who go into making WFP thrive and build out and like reach out to new folks. And an example of some of the groups that currently exist within WFP, clicked the wrong button, are these. And I'm not going to read them all aloud for folks, but these are some of the statewide organizations that we have here on our left side. And then we have the folks that sit on the regional levels here on the right. So the Bay Area, Central Coast, Central Valley, LA, OCIE, and San Diego, they all have some similar folks, that especially folks that sit on the statewide level, and then their own unique C4s that exist within their own region and organize and do work in their own region. So with that in mind, we around the holidays of last year, so around Christmas 2023, the steering committee, who is the governing body of WFP, came together to lay out what our strategic directions were for this coming year. And in order here, so like priority 1, 2, 3, expanding the state legislative squad, and I'll talk about what that means in a second here. Expanding the state legislative squad in 45 key races, upgrade to liberal Dems and 2 to 3 more, so a total of plus 3 more folks in the Senate and plus 2 in the Assembly. Again, I'll cover what this means in a second. Focus on the pipeline development of local races, so board of supervisors, municipal races, school board, water district, what have you kind of district. Focusing on the pipeline development and support for folks running in those seats. And then third, and this one is kind of still iffy, up in the air, depending on how things are looking, but work with the federal team to take back 2 to 4 of the congressional swing seats and expand the progressives that we have in Congress. So I'll touch upon how, especially the first 2, as those are most relevant and pertinent to the work that we do. But as I was talking about the legislative squad, the California legislature does a lot of work. I say we because I'm California, but the legislature in California passes many more times bills than Congress ever does on a good year. We have a supermajority of Dems. That can mean a bunch of things, and I'll explain that in a second. But we have a supermajority of Dems. We have a Democratic governor, Democratic courts. There's a lot of things that are in favor for Democrats to pass legislation. Granted, it's not that easy. All Dems are not the same color blue. So what does that actually look like for us in terms of passing legislation in the Assembly and Senate? And what this could look like is universal health care, stronger rent control, Costa-Hawkins getting rid of, Green New Deal. I mean, the list goes onward, and there's almost never a threshold to the policies that we can pass except for the political will of those in office. So the possibilities are endless of things that California can do, and as the saying goes, as California goes, the rest of the nation goes. We just are at the forefront of things here before the rest of the country catches up to us. But going through what this actually looks like, I'm not going to quiz folks on this. This is a lot of information. This is the best way that we could come up with representing this data in like a power mapping format. But this is kind of how we like to approach talking about the Assembly. So the Assembly is basically the House of Representatives equivalent of the California State Legislature. And there are 80 seats. 62 of those are Democrats. 53 votes are needed for a 2/3 supermajority, so we are well above that threshold, and 41 votes are needed for a majority. Different bills require different thresholds to pass their respective chambers, simple majority and then supermajority. So that's kind of where we are with Democrats. However, again, like I said, not all the Democrats are created equal and on the same shade of blue. So here we have, from left to right, we have folks that understand the systemic change of things, and then on the far right, naturally, are the reactionary forces with the Republicans and some of the notorious folks that interfere in politics, apartment associations, realtors, the chamber, what have you. But we have about 24 progressives, and progressives I will put little asterisks next to, and this is just broad progressive. Like, this person might not be the ideal person to run at every instance and being super progressive, but these 24 folks are what we would typically consider to be progressive. The ones in purple highlighted there are folks that we have endorsed as WFP, so they are most likely to be quote unquote actually progressive when it comes down to most issues. Green are open seats this coming year or this year, and then the black is just the standard color format for all of those listed there. So 24 progressives in the Assembly, 10 liberals, and liberals are like, this is not a diehard progressive, they will flip-flop on stuff. The typical liberal that you would imagine, there are 10 of those. But if you do the math, simple math, 41 votes are needed for a majority. Even if we get all 10 liberals, that only puts us at 34 votes. So what that means, unfortunately, is that there are votes that exist in the 28 corporate Dems, and then technically in the 18 Republicans, that are needed to pass anything for a simple majority. That then leads to, oh, if we need those votes, and there's 7 votes that we need from the 41 through from the 34, if we need 7 votes, those are 7 people that need to be flipped over from a corporate Dem to voting for progressive legislation, assuming everyone else is in full agreement with the language. So that's how you get things to be watered down. That's how you get bills that get killed. That's how you get legislation that sounds good at first, but then over time really gets diminished by, oh, these corporate Dems are in the bag of the realtors, and so we have to get rid of this line that protects renters too much, or this doesn't help cops with all the millions of dollars that they already have, so we need to include this line. Politics issues aside, it's just a numbers game in terms of how many folks that we need to actually pass the legislation that we, as Californians, know that we would like. Again, universal health care, stronger rent control issues, Green New Deal, environmental concerns, what have you. There are a lot of things that we can pass because we want them to pass, but the votes are being held back by corporate forces who do the bidding of whoever lobbies them the most. The same issue is present in the Senate. The Senate is only 40 seats, but 32 of them are still Dems. 27 votes are needed for the 2/3 supermajority. and then 21 votes are needed for a majority. It's a little more dire in this section. Again, progressives is a general term here, so there are about 10 progressives listed there for liberal Dems, 18 corporate Dems, and then 8 Republicans. Again, 14 total for the side that could pass legislation if everyone was in complete agreement. Down also 7 needed to get to just the simple majority to pass legislation. The other thing that I'm not going to spend a lot of time mentioning, but the other thing that's important to note is that each chair of a committee, so the typical committees are like Health Committee, Judicial Committee, Appropriations Committee, each of those chair committees in both the Assembly and the Senate really are able to decide what bills get heard in their committee. So I have 3 of the folks listed here in terms of what chairs that they have. So corporate Dems, if they chair a committee on appropriations or judicial committee or clean energy, they can decide if a bill gets heard or not, just because. Like, they don't have to provide a reason. It's always nice if they do, but most oftentimes they just don't have a bill get heard. So this is sometimes how you get legislation that just dies without ever having a vote. Not having the votes is one way for the bill to die, but if, let's say, Senator Bradford's like, you know what, I don't want this clean energy bill to pass, we're just not going to have a hearing for it. That's it. Bill's dead. You have to wait a whole nother year for it to get heard again, if assuming that someone else becomes the chair of that committee. So there are a lot of different pieces within the Assembly and Senate that play a part in stifling progressive legislation, progressive bills from passing along. But as I mentioned earlier, in terms of what some of our priorities are, is expanding and growing out our squad. This is just some of them right now. We need to get the updated graphic after I think we finished up all of our state ledge endorsements. I could be wrong. There might be a couple more left. But all the folks here we have listed on the left are folks that are currently in our squad, and the folks that will be joining them on the right, hopefully in November, are folks that are running currently for office. So starting on the left, we have Senator Waham, Senator Menjivar, Senator Smallwood Cuevas, Senator now Gomez Reyes, Assemblywoman Ortega, Lee, Calra, Bryan, Jackson, McKinnon, and then hopefully to join them is Sasha Rene Perez and Sade El-Hawari. There's a couple more. There's Javanka Beckles in the Bay Area. There's Maricel Rubio, John Yee. I don't know all the top off my head because there's just a bunch going on, but we hope to expand the squad from just these 10 to include many more that win their races in November, so we are able to pass legislation and shift the odds that we have in both the Assembly and the Senate. But like I mentioned, the work that we do isn't just limited to the state legislature. One of the things that we have going on now, or unfortunately now again, last year we fought against the recall of Jessie Lopez in the city of Santa Ana. She was one of the first folks that we endorsed as WFP back in 2020. She basically just couldn't be bought out by the Police Officers Association on the city council. She stood her ground, so they forced onto the ballot a special election to recall her. We were successful in beating back that recall. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of unions. It took a lot of the C4s in the area. We came down to help for the last 5 days in person. And then our organizer, Laura, was down there supporting them for months and months as she was based in OC. But that's one of the things that we're seeing more frequently, unfortunately, is fighting back against these recalls. One of the recalls we are fighting now is in either Millbrae or Burlingame with Maurice Goodman up here in the peninsula in San Mateo County. Again, same issue, folks just not liking the candidate for standing for progressive issues and then forcing a special election onto the ballot. But not everything is always just political work. We also, or campaign work, I would say, we like to highlight the work that our elected officials are doing, especially with community leaders and community orgs that help them along the way. So we'll host town halls with our elected officials, with C4s and C3s, just to highlight the work. So whether it's about youth, health and safety, or renter protections, or getting involved in the budget process, some things that like maybe folks don't always find super sexy when it comes to political work, but things that are important in getting people engaged in the political process and seeing that, hey, you have someone in office that's looking out for you and wants you to be a part of the work that they're doing. We also have socials that coming up. !events should bring up the Mobilize page for all of our upcoming events. Anything that we have going on, socials, other things, they will show up on our Mobilize page. Two of them that I know that we have coming up soon are trivia nights, or I guess a bingo and a trivia night. The first being a music bingo tomorrow in LA. You can sign up for that. Let me make sure this still works. And then we have a Sacramento trivia night on the 11th. So I've lost track of days. Next Thursday, week from this Thursday. And then the LA one again is tomorrow. If you're able to attend, sign up on Mobilize. It's always fantastic to see folks. I won't be at either, I don't think. But you'll meet Hannah and then Neil, respectively, for their two events. We are in the middle of our own elections inside WFP for member reps. If you are a dues-paying member of California WFP and have been for as long as 2 seconds, you are able to vote for member reps in your respective region. So if you are in the Bay Area, for example, you get to vote for any of the individuals running for member rep. Again, these are the folks that sit on the steering committees who help with endorsements, with policy decisions, anything like that on a regional level. The voting began last Tuesday and will go through this Friday. So if you are a current dues-paying member of WFP, you should have gotten your ballot already. If not, please let me know, and I will be sure to get you a ballot so you can vote. Where can I rate dues? I just dropped the link in the chat. It's the Act Blue page, Jane, or anyone else who's interested. Sign up on the Act Blue page, and then within sometime tonight, if you do it tonight, you should get your ballot in via email for you to vote. And again, you can read about the candidates, their descriptions and everything. Their term goes for a year, and they will be your representative on the steering committee. The second thing too is our deadline to apply for an endorsement. So this is relevant to you or someone else that you might know. The deadline to apply is July 15th. That is 2 weeks, 14 days from today. This is for any seat. It doesn't matter what seat it is. They don't have to be like completely announced. You don't have to have your kickoff yet. Whatever it may be, this is on our website. You just go to our website, wworkingfamilies.org, and there's an application link right there. It does have policy questions, so like we do want to know where you kind of stand on issues. So I'm not going to say it just takes a minute to fill out, but you are more than welcome to share this with anybody. You are more than welcome to do it yourself if you're a candidate. If you have questions about it, you can feel free to reach out to me directly or anyone else if you know other organizers in your region. But again, deadline to vote for member reps is this coming Friday. You should have received your ballot if you haven't already. And then deadline 2 weeks, a fortnight from today is running for local office endorsement application. Lastly, I would like to share who our California staff is exactly. So we have our California State Director, Jane Kim. We have, I always forget to change it, Deputy Director of California, Jorge Contreras. We have Senior Federal Affairs Strategist, Adam Gold. And then all of us organizers are Alicia Crater in the East Bay. Alicia is also responsible for all of our social media graphics or any of our graphics that look good. So even this graphic here that I have on screen, this is Alicia's work. So if you ever see anything that looks fantastic on our social media or a video or whatever, know that it was Alicia painstakingly doing that work, but enjoying it. Myself, I am based in the South Bay area, but I am, again, senior statewide organizer. We have James Coleman in the Peninsula and San Francisco, Neil Sanapa, who is in charge of Sacramento, the Central Valley, and Central Coast, Lori Nguyen, who is in the OC and IE, so that's Orange County and the Inland Empire, Hannah Kessel in Los Angeles County, and Adriana Lunes Cortez in San Diego. If you are interested in chatting with any of us at any point, I believe everyone has their Calendly, or at least a way to get in touch with us, on the link tree that I just put back up in the chat. But with that, it is warm today. I'm feeling the warmth not having AC in my room already. But if folks have additional questions, feel free to ask. That kind of concludes this section of the welcome gathering. Pretty quick. Happy to answer anything that folks might have questions about, things I didn't cover, things I kind of went through a little quickly. But again, checking out our Mobilize page that you probably signed up through this event on, or just throughout the week, or you might get email notifications. All of our upcoming events will show up there regardless of what region you are in. So if you know of an event in some other area and you know someone up there, direct them to that event. Or if you see an upcoming event in your region, whether in person or online, you are more than welcome to sign up for that and join us at one of those. What else was there? Endorsement screenings are coming up. We don't have any listed yet on Mobilize, I don't think, but because the applications are due the 15th, we're going to start doing the screenings, which are available to everybody, whether a dues paying member or not. Only dues paying members can submit their feedback for consideration to member rep, but anyone's open to any of the public screenings that we host, either in person or online, in the coming month. So if you're interested in getting involved in the political process, seeing how we do screenings, asking candidates questions, at basically every level except for some of the larger ones that have already been screened, candidate screenings are the place for you. But otherwise, I will stick around for another few minutes, see if folks have any other questions, but otherwise, thank you everybody for joining. Hope everyone, again, stays cool, stays hydrated, stays in the shade if you're able to. And the other thing, these recordings are always up on our YouTube page, so if you want to send these to anybody that is interested, you're more than happy to. But we also host these every first Monday of the month. So if you know someone who's interested in learning more about WFP, want them to attend these welcome gatherings, this is the place. They will always show up on Mobilize. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everybody else who was just lurking and watching. I'll stick around for like another minute or two, just in case folks have any remaining questions. I will grab a popsicle after this because it is warm and my apartment does not have AC in my own room. Okay, I don't see any final thoughts. So with that then, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your evening. Stay cool, stay hydrated, and I will see you at our next event. Take care, everybody.